Heather Barnes from the Shedd Aquarium and also Improv Queen. Thank you for joining us today on the Attraction Pros COVID-19 video series. How are you doing today, Heather?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Could you kind of give us a rundown of kind of what's been going on with you and how this has all kind of affected you?
Absolutely. It's really good to be here. Thank you both, and happy Friday. Fridays are always great days when you work Monday through Friday, because even if you don't have a super packed week because of COVID-19, you still look forward to not feeling guilty about doing nothing on the weekend if you have a particularly slow day. At least that's been the case for me. And it's been a roller coaster, just like you said. Some days are very busy and jam packed, and as the industry tries to adjust, and some days are hurry up and wait, and then wait for something. So it's been a complete blend. I have done everything from the standard cleaning out your closets, jigsaw puzzles, recycling workshops for friends and family, and card making workshops, arts and crafts, all of it, to keeping focused on managing two jobs. I have the two roles. I work as a director at Shedd Aquarium, and then I also run a small business, Improvisation at Work, where we use a lot of science communication and improv and tools for leaders and for professionals in STEM. So I have been busy.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of what the scene at Shedd Aquarium has been like for, for the staff, for the management, and kind of, a number of initiatives going on. In fact, you guys got a ton of publicity right after closing when the penguins were taken to the Amazon. And that seemed to, at least from what I noticed, seemed to kind of kick off many zoos and aquariums and attractions kind of using their animals and being able to create a lot of engaging content online. But just kind of curious as far as what things have been like with Shedd over the last few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I do want to give a big shout out to our leaders, in particular CEO at Shedd Aquarium, for closing so quickly and having such a good response, and for being such strong communicators internally to all of our staff. I'm really fortunate to work there and feel very included in what is going on minute to minute. I just think that the communication has been exceptional, as well as the compassion from our leaders. But on your note about the penguins, yes, they are famous, world famous. I think they've hit, or we've got comments from all of the countries, continents. It's been worldwide and really fun to bring a moment of happiness and joy in a time of uncertainty. And we have such a strong team at Shedd, and there are critical team members going into Shedd every day to make sure that the animals are cared for and well. And that was really fun to have the penguins have a shining moment, and that just took on like wildfire. So that's been really, really fun. And I think we're continuing to build on those opportunities. How do we think about communicating differently and sharing differently? And I think every organization across the country is really thinking about how to share what they do or do what they do differently.
Heather, can you talk a little bit more about sort of the communication and the compassion that you felt from Shedd? Because I know a lot of organizations are really struggling. Like, what do we tell our employees? How do we communicate with them? How do we engage people that aren't even here anymore? So can you peel back that onion just a little bit and give us some insight into that?
Yeah, it's been remarkable. We overnight, like many organizations, went to making sure we could be online and at least have some FaceTime. I had daily at 9 a.m. just checking calls, and the very first agenda topic was just, how are you doing as a human being? And how are you doing as a person? I just want personal updates. And that was really cool because it shifted just from not the business, and that was there. Certainly we talked about the business and the functions, but first it was, how are you as a human and what are your needs? And I think that was just beautifully executed and genuine. And I felt that genuine. I felt like I was cared for most as just a person through this. And through our closure, through our very clear decisions, like we're closed through until this date, and here's what that looks like, and here's what that means, to the most recent town hall meeting we had, where our CEO got on Zoom and made sure that we had the capacity through Zoom to have almost 400 people log in. And we talked about really fun wins and things that we were able to celebrate. We got to check out some of the habitats where our animals are being cared for, because many of us miss the animals, and give updates on staff that are making masks and things that people are doing for one another. And then updates on Shedd, and really good messaging that while we're closed through April 30th, we don't know when we're going to reopen at this point. And I think even hearing from leaders, this is what we know and this is what we don't know, that brings comfort. It feels inclusive, and I've really appreciated that transparency. I've also had 2 vice presidents just have open office hours where people can come in and talk. And then our CEO has done a series of coffee chats that is just open for anybody to call into. So I think a combination of those, to me, has been incredible leadership and incredible sensitivity to every single employee, and to giving that a priority in a time when that could easily fall by the wayside, because we're worried about funding and lack of visitors and all of the things that so many of us are worried about. So
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that definitely helps. That definitely helps. And it really solidifies how this has to be a multi-tiered approach. I think some people are looking for what's that one thing I can do to engage all my people, right? Yeah. And I think it really needs to be, multifaceted, if you will, looking at lots of different angles.
Excellent. You said that very succinctly. And there have been lots of different ways in which we can engage, which has been really nice.
That's awesome.
And the topics have been so different. Everything from here's our animals that we love to here's what you can do and how you can step in. Our HR department has even provided links of organizations that if people feel like they need to do something, whether it make something or donate time or donate money, organizations that they vetted, that staff have recommended for people to get involved on all different levels.
That's awesome. One of the things you said a second ago is that there's a lot of sharing of small wins along the way. And yeah. I know that one of them, obviously, we just talked about with kind of the engagement with the animals that has caused a lot of really good publicity. Are there any other examples that you're able to share?
From a Shedd perspective, there's so many. People are collaborating and connecting in different and new ways, obviously behind the scenes. There's been really funny things that have made me laugh, like the crazy sock competition, the dance parties, the virtual toasts. We all got together and early on sang happy birthday, which some might not recommend together to people. There have just been a lot of wins through this. And I know for me personally, to shift gears, is that I also am really involved at one point was at Second City, and I'm on faculty there, even though I haven't taught in a while. And I took an online improv class, and it made my day. And coming from teaching improv and doing it in person, I thought, this is not going to work. And it was such a big win, and it was so much fun. And there was someone there from New York City, from Albuquerque. There was another man there that said, I would not be able to participate in this because with my career being in the military, I move around too much, but because of this being online, now I'm able to participate. And he said, I hope you continue, I hope Second City continues this beyond COVID-19. And right, those are the nuggets. Like, I hope we can keep showing Wellington exploring Shedd beyond COVID-19, and how can we think about the wins that we find and building those out to get more people access that maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity to take an improv class or to come and see Wellington in person. And so I think it's been up to us as leaders to think of what those onlines are. Are we going to film people going down roller coasters and seeing the reactions? So if you can't be there, at least you might see someone else experiencing that moment of joy. And what does it look like? So there are going to be more wins, and I hope that sort of makes sense. That was a long-winded answer.
Totally.
It actually makes me think of an email I got just before this call, and it was somebody from one of the major theme park chains, and he said, based on the compassion that you were talking about earlier, he said our directives, our goals for 2020, whenever we happen to open, he said our goals are going to be very different. He said even coming from the top leaders in the company, he said our goals are supposed to be more about compassion for employees and taking care of employees and guests, and a little less focused on the bottom line. So you think about things that this is actually done that can help move forward, or we can still look at post COVID-19. I think that's a huge win, right? If we're now even more focused on our teams and guests, which is what Josh and I talk about all the time, that's a huge win.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's finding those and figuring out how to maximize those wins and keep those moving forward. Yeah.
And it's almost like, if you think about it, you're using this time right now to channel focus towards compassion for employees, compassion for guests, and like you mentioned earlier, of just checking in on, how are you doing as a human, or are you doing okay? These are all things that are not exclusive to being in a pandemic. These are all things that we could probably reflect on and say, were we doing this as well as we could prior to COVID-19? And is this all just going to come to a grinding halt and then we're all right, business as usual, go spin the turnstiles and make those cash registers, keep ringing? Or is it, hey, we actually need to really implement more of this and kind of just weave it through more of the culture?
Yeah.
And, beyond this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's, it really is definitely, very, very much a kind of a mindset exercise of just saying, what are we able to do to make sure we continue doing this moving forward?
Yeah. I'll respond to that actually really quick, because I'm thinking that exact same thing, and actually hoping that, in the past where we couldn't see like a specific ROI to compassion, right? That now we're going to start to see, okay, here's the impact of being more compassionate to our team members. Here's the impact of, treating them more like human beings and checking in more often, rather than just saying, hey, we've got a lineup of 30 people, we're going to be busy today. Go for it. Have a great day. I think that mindset, like Josh said, that can help us move forward and maybe see the impact of things that we didn't really take the time maybe to look at before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's been a huge takeaway that I have felt as both an employee, and that I think about in terms of working with others, is what is that compassion and how can I show more of that? And I've spent some time thinking about that, even with my family and loved ones, and talking to them on the phone. I'm like, oh, I'm going to kill this person. And it's like, all right, how can you lead more with compassion and set that aside, or talk about that in a different way at a different time than normally? I was just more bam, bam, bam. Let's get the list done and move on.
Yeah, and ultimately, when you do break it down, you are able to see how these kind of emotional elements of leadership do actually lead back to the bottom line. So showing compassion for your employees is ultimately ideally going to result in less turnover and more employee loyalty. And, they are now singing the praises of their management, their leadership. I've been seeing a lot of people, posting on social media, even people who have been furloughed, who
Right.
are sharing how great their company is to work for.
Right.
And, there's no better message than that for a company that, has to temporarily let you go, or even for people who have been laid off, to say this company is absolutely fantastic. Hopefully will drive people to want to work there, which is going to, reduce their recruitment resources.
Right.
And also people are seeing what the culture is from the inside, that it means, okay, I also want to go be a patron of this business as well. And I want to go visit once this is all over, because if this is how well they take care of their employees, probably means they're going to take care of their guests too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Heather, I'm curious, thinking about the Shedd and even your improv business, what do you see as sort of the long-term outcome, right? None of us have a crystal ball, but I'm just curious, like what kind of thoughts are going through your mind and even the management at Shedd of what this might look like on the other side?
So that's such a good question, right? I do wish we had a crystal ball, because then, Matt, we'd really be in the right business. And I do think it's going to be so different. And in the beginning, I wasn't really necessarily aware of how different. I'm still not aware of how different. For example, with not gathering large crowds. So even in the oceanarium, the shows that I direct, the aquatic presentations seat 900 people. And what does that look like? So I'm thinking about, how do we seat people differently? How do we make sure that we potentially have less people in that space? And what is social distancing like? And how do we work through managing that? And I'm sure many organizations are thinking about that. Also, to touch on my point, for my personal business and for things, how can we do more things online, or what might that look like? Or how do we go behind the scenes and offer an extraordinary experience for someone in another country or location in a way that is still meaningful and compelling and engaging and fun? And how can we do improvisation online? And how can we share our work online, not in a way that's just, and Matt, we've talked about this, here's my slide deck, thank you, but how can things continue to be participatory and personalized and engaging and focused on the individual and tailored? And those are the things we need to keep thinking through in a way that is true to the mission and vision and the goals of the organization, and still reaches out to people online. And that's a whole new platform. And so it's been fun. I've been playing around with my nieces and nephews on Zoom meetings and loading presentations and loading videos and loading songs and playing different games and exercises, just to test new technology in terms of how impactful it is from an engagement standpoint. And I think there's going to be more of that moving forward. I think certainly the social distancing and what that looks like from an attendance and throughput and operational standpoint, and then also from an engagement and participatory standpoint, what might that look like? So I think there's going to be some differences there and some challenges. They're not impossible to overcome, but it's going to take a little thinking outside of the box to get there.
Yeah, and you've used a lot of improv activities, when you were at MSI, certainly, in your work now. And you said you weren't really sure how that online improv session was going to go, but you said it was great. So what made it great, and are there things that you could take from those learnings and use in your own business?
Yeah, what made it great was connecting real time with someone huddled in her bathroom in New York City. And it was this tiny little space, and she was improvising. And that made it great because we were there for her and she was there for us at these two different locations. What made it great was the person I talked about that said he wouldn't be able to do this if it weren't for COVID-19. And so I have these expectations that when you're doing improv in a room with people, it's a 10. I was like, oh, the online improv is going to be like a 2 or 3, and it turned out to be much higher. It was like 7, and I still want to get it to the 10 like we talked about. But what made it fun is laughter, connecting with people, listening, really listening, and having those special moments with strangers and relating. There was so much relating to everybody in the situation.
And it probably adds a little bit more of a challenging dynamic, and challenging in a good way, that I know, improv, involves a lot of reading of body language and being able to kind of riff back and forth. Was it able to be duplicated in that sense, or does it actually add a little bit more struggle, which ultimately leads to better output from it?
It did lend itself. We set it up into groups. So groups of 4 would work together in one screen. So it's kind of like a chat room. And how we set up the exercises, or how the exercises were led to us, it did lend itself to that success. Now, there were the delays. There were the technical breakdowns. I think at one point the instructor cut us all off and we had to log back in. But with that, there was also an incredible amount of patience. Nobody ever felt frustrated because everybody knew we were all in this together, trying to do something really cool and really fun in this new way. So there was not any anxiety felt by people in the room, like, what, I couldn't hear you, Josh, or your screen went away. There was a really nice patience that was cool.
Yeah, and I can imagine, any of those like technical difficulties just kind of gives you more of an opportunity for spontaneity. Like
Yeah.
I was watching the Today Show this morning, and Al Roker was at home, and Savannah was in the studio, and they were talking, and Al accidentally switched to a different channel on his microphone, so he starts talking, but you can't hear it. And I'm watching it, and I was like, all right, this is like such a such a major production that happens every single day. They don't really have that much room for error to be able
Right.
to help like with a lot of understanding. So if something like this happens, they need to recover from it quickly. And Savannah like immediately kind of, I would say like she probably has a lot of like good improvisational skills because
Yeah,
she was able to just kind of take it and just keep talking until Al got his mic back and working, and then they were able to joke around. It's like, oh, I switched to a different channel because I sat on my
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and those are funny moments if you're in the moment. And that's what I talked to some of my colleagues in Second City faculty, and they're like, if your cat walks in or your dog walks in and poops on the floor, that's a great comedic moment.
Right.
Work with that, integrate any of that into the scene that you're currently improvising about. So it's about taking those moments and making them work.
And especially since so much of the communication is moving to this platform, whether it's an improv class or just regular meetings, that you almost do need to figure out not how to block it out or try to avoid it happening, but to really just be able to pick up the ball and run with it. Matt and I were recording a podcast episode this morning where the guest, his 7-year-old daughter, walked into the room, and he just picked her up and put her on his lap, and we were able to talk to her for a couple of minutes. So it was like perfect. It just sort of weaved its way nicely into the application that we're using that otherwise would be something that would be, frowned down upon in normal circumstances. So.
I think so too. I think as society as a whole is being embracing the family interruptions, the background, the technology challenges.
Right.
Well, I think it goes back to what you said earlier, that we're all in this together, right? So if I'm going to have these issues with the dog pooping on the floor or whatever it is, that I'm going to have some grace and patience when it happens to somebody else. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think before people were working from home as much as they are, and, they were kind of forced to do that. I think like Josh said, that unprofessionalism would have been frowned upon. Like, you can't control your dog, right? Really? Right. So I think maybe this has made us all look at each other as more as humans and connect that way more than just, Josh, you're my coworker, Heather, you're a colleague, that so it's a level of connection, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Heather, I know we've been talking about improv, and I'd love it if you could talk just a little bit about like what that is. If we could back up just for a second, because I've seen it in action. I've seen what you can do with a group of people, but how does using improv, outside of a comedic skit, how is using that at work something that's beneficial?
Yes, and I think we should do a quick exercise to show our viewers, and then we'll do a quick debrief. So we're going to try and do this. We're going to do one word story, which is one word at a time. We'll go Heather first, Matt second, Josh third. We'll go around and around. And we'll call this story a day at the amusement park. The first day the amusement park opens after COVID-19. We're going to tell this story one word at a time. Let's try it. You ready?
Yep.
Matt, questions?
Let's do it.
Yesterday,
I
went
to
the
amusement
park
and
I
ran
the
roller
coaster
and
then
I
had
funnel
cake
and
ice
cream
with
sprinkles
and
after
I
ate
more
ice
cream
and fudge
popsicles.
I needed
to
Nap.
Great job. Good job. Good job. Good job. So, quick debrief. How did we do?
We did okay. I couldn't tell if we were an employee or a guest, and then we just started eating. So
Yeah, right.
Nice, right? So that's a nice moment. And sometimes you're not sure if you're getting direction from a leader, if what the role is supposed to be. And that might be a nice time to emphasize how important it is to be super clear, because it might be one thing to one person in their mind, and it might mean something else to someone else in their mind. What else were we doing really there to make that work?
I think we were listening, right? And trying to remember what the story was so that we could add on to it in a logical manner. We probably could have taken this in a completely different, crazy place, but I think we were all just trying to make it real linear.
Yeah. So it's about listening. It's about responding to one another. It's about thinking about what the sentence needs. What's missing? Do we need a verb or a noun? And we're all paying attention to that. We all know the rules of a sentence and a story, and we're contributing different pieces, and we're adjusting based on what's been thrown out there. We're agreeing. Nobody said, no, Matt, ice cream is wrong. If it's just open, they wouldn't have ice cream the first day. Like, we all agree what was out there. And so there's a lot of yes and, a lot of listening, a lot of accepting, a lot of how do we deal with ambiguous situations or things that might not be very clear to us, and how do we still move forward in a way that helps the group. So there's so many things that help us think about being a good, strong team player. Improv is about supporting the team, not just one person. And I think there's a lot of nice ways to send those messages. Plus, it's cool. Research indicates the more groups play and work together, the more they're going to help each other out throughout the day. So there's just so many benefits of this, and so much that allows people a creative outlet and an outlet to have fun and to laugh. And going back to that retention comment you made, if people are laughing in the workplace, they are more likely to stay. And so someone I presented with, I think, mentioned, oh, I know what you do. You operationalize fun. And that was a really good catchphrase. And in a way, it's true. If you set up what you're going to do and why you're going to do it, then it can be a lot of fun. But it's about the why and the skill set. It's just not about being silly.
totally, that makes total sense. And this was a lot of fun.
Good.
Yeah. I want to go have some ice cream now.
Yeah, and some funnel cakes.
We got Josh laughing, and I liked his edit. He's like, we did okay. We did great. For the first round, it was awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, thanks so much for joining us here on this COVID-19 video series. Hopefully we have the chance to be able to see each other in person, hopefully sooner rather than later. In the meantime, any lasting final messages for our audience?
Thank you. And you can, too, Josh, take an online stand-up or improv class at secondcity.com. They're super fun. And it has just been great to be here. Thank you both for having this. It's important to connect.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heather.
Bye, guys.
Bye.